If you've ever thought about investing in property here in New Zealand, you've probably heard of property coaching companies, places like iFindProperty, Propellor Properties, Positive Real Estate, maybe even Opes Partners. But you might be thinking, well, what's the actual difference between these? What do they cost? What do they actually give me? Hi, I'm Ed McKnight, economist here at Opes Partners, and in today's video, we're going to tell you openly and honestly what each of these companies charge and also what you get as part of their service. Now, just in terms of what do we actually mean by a property coaching company? Well, specifically here, we're talking about companies that go out to developers, find good quality new build investment properties, and then also find investors who want to purchase those properties and essentially match them up and also create strategies for those property investors. Now, when you're considering which property investment company to work with, there are really 6 things you want to look out for. Who are the people running the company? What are their services? What do those services cost? What properties do they recommend? And then also, which company do I trust and which company do I think is going to give the best quality advice? Now, ultimately, in today's video, I can tell you who the people are, what their services are, what the services cost in the properties. Those last 2 questions around who do you trust and who do you think is going to give the best quality advice for you, ultimately, those are going to be subjective questions which you're going to have to answer on your own. But just before we jump in and answer those 4 questions around price and services, I do just want to mention there's always a bit of a risk when you talk about your competitors that you might say something wrong. Look, what we've tried to do in order to make sure that this video is as fair and as factual as possible is we've tried to verify everything with publicly available sources, and we have also approached each company for comment. Now, first on our list is iFindProperty, which was founded by Marie Tassel in Rotorua in 2006. And since starting that company, they have expanded nationwide and they've got people all the way from down in Dunedin right up to Auckland as well. In terms of the services they offer, they've got 2 main ones. Their flagship service and main service is called the Premium Buyers Service, and that is specifically around existing properties. How that works, you come to them with some criteria about what sort of property you're looking for, they'll go out and try and find it. Now, on the other hand, they've got their new build service. That's where they've got new build properties from developers that they can then recommend you. You can decide whether you want to purchase or not. The cost for that Premium Buyers Service, we understand, is 10K plus GST, so 11.5K including GST. On the new build side, there is a success fee, but we haven't been able to verify what that success fee is. In terms of what sort of properties they tend to recommend, there are 2 new builds currently available on their website. These projects are both in Auckland and are priced between $1.3 and $1.7 million. That does put them at the top of the range compared to other properties that are recommended by companies on this list. Now, something that's a bit different about iFind's new builds, at least for what we've seen on their website, is that they tend to be 4 to 5 bedroom townhouses, though they do have some studio options available as well. And they have a commercial contract in place with a community housing provider or kāinga ora. Now, the way that is set up is that a community housing provider might rent that property from you for 9 years. Now, that does mean that it's a bit different than choosing a tenant on your own or any of the other kind of more standard ways of renting a property, which we'll see from some of the other companies. Now, does that mean that iFindProperty only do this sort of commercial new builds? No, not at all. This is just what we've been able to see publicly available on their website and also seen through their email marketing. Second on our list is Positive Real Estate, which is based out of Wellington and is run by Sue Irons. Now, something that's different about Positive Real Estate is that they were initially founded in Australia and have quite a big team over there, about 60 to 70 people is my understanding. Now, Positive Real Estate service structured a bit differently to some of the others on this list. First, you purchase a lifetime coaching program or lifetime membership. That costs about 10K. And then after you've gone through that, worked with a property coach, gone through some of their education, gone to their monthly events, that's when you can transition over and decide to purchase some new builds through them. Now, again, lifetime membership costs about 10K including GST, and then there's no additional cost for purchasing those new build properties. Just remember as well, with every single company on this list, when they're recommending you a new build, and that includes us here at Opes, when you go and purchase a new build through them and say, yes, I want to purchase this investment, yes, I think this is a good investment, they're also going to be charging a marketing fee back to the developer as well. Just something to keep in mind. Now, with Positive Real Estate, you can't just skip ahead to the new build properties. You do have to go through that lifetime coaching program. You do have to purchase that membership. It is a compulsory part of their service. In terms of the properties they tend to recommend, from what we've seen on their website, seen in the industry, and also seen in terms of their property packs, going to these seminars, they tend to focus more on higher spec apartments. We've seen those recommended in Wellington, Auckland, and also on the North Shore of Auckland as well. Next on our list is Propellor Properties, which is run by Nikki Connors. Now, their service, again, structured a bit differently. First of all, you come to them, they'll write you a strategy, a property investment strategy for free, look at what you need, and then they'll go away and find properties for you. Now, when they come back and recommend properties, there is a $6,000 compliance fee per property that you decide to go ahead and purchase. In terms of the properties they tend to recommend, houses, primarily down in Canterbury, where houses tend to be a bit cheaper, quite a few townhouses as well, and then apartments. And here's an example of an apartment complex which a lot of Propeller property investors purchase into. That's the Sugar Tree up in Auckland, which is just on the fringe of the city. Something a bit different again about Propeller Properties, they have a sister company called Metropolis Design. Now these guys put together and retail furniture packs. So if you're purchasing an apartment and decide, hey, I want to rent that fully furnished, get a bit of extra rent, then there is that option available. The one thing I'd just recommend if you're thinking about purchasing a furniture pack, and this applies to anybody in the industry, is just make sure that in your cash flow projections, you're planning to replace that potentially every 5 years, because couches and beds, they start to get worn out. 5 years is a pretty prudent timeline to replace that furniture pack on. And then second of all, if you're paying 10 grand for some furniture, just make sure as well that you really are getting 10K worth of furniture within that pack. Last on our list is Opes Partners, which was started by Andrew Dickel in 2013. And again, full disclosure, I'm from Opes Partners. You're probably watching this video on either the Opes Partners website or our YouTube channel. So take what we've got to say with a grain of salt about ourselves, because hey, we think we're pretty good. Our service, again, structured a bit differently. People initially come in for a portfolio planning session. That's where we write out a portfolio plan, a property strategy for the investor. That's at no cost. And then we have a property selection meeting where we come in with properties and match them up with that plan. Again, that's at no cost as well. So investors working with us, there's no cost to use our service. Though of course, just like every other company on this list, we are charging a fee back to the developer when we say, yes, that is a property that you decided you want to purchase. Yes, you think that's a good investment. In terms of how we differ, two main points of difference. The first is that we've got quite a large group. So we've got a lot of sister companies. We've got Venture Management, property management firm, Momentum Property, that's an accounting firm, and then Catalyst Financial, that's a mortgage brokerage. The reason we do this is that we can then provide a really good wraparound service for the investor. If there's ever a problem with the mortgage, your financial advisor from Opes can walk down the hallway, have a wee chit chat about what's going on with the mortgage broker, get that sorted for you. Same thing with the property management side. So keeping that all in-house means there's a really good wraparound service. The second main differentiator is our love of tools. So there are two main tools that investors use when working through our service. The first is called My Wealth Plan, and this is used when you're in that initial portfolio planning session. This is a piece of software you won't see anywhere else because we've built it specifically to help investors plan out their property portfolios. And then the second favorite tool we have is the Opes Return on Investment Calculator. This is like a massive souped up spreadsheet so you can accurately analyze properties when you're in that property selection meeting. Now, what I'm not saying is that we've got lots of tools and nobody else has any tools as good as us. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm sure that all of the other companies on this list also have tools when you're going through their service. We just haven't been able to verify publicly what those specifically are. In terms of the properties we tend to recommend, lots of houses, specifically in Rolleston, Canterbury, Christchurch, townhouses. Here's an example of one in Mangere Bridge in Auckland, really good quality. And then also, when we recommend apartments, they tend to be on the higher yielding side. So for example, here you've got in front of you a dual key apartment. That's where you purchase one apartment, but there's actually two apartments within it. The reason we do this is because then it's a multi-income property and then tends to be much more high yielding. Now let's compare each of these companies side by side, starting with costs. So iFindProperty, $11.5K per property if purchasing existing. There is a success fee for purchasing a new build property. We just weren't able to confirm what that was. Positive Real Estate, $10K up front. That's for your lifetime membership, then no cost for any additional new builds. Propeller Properties, $6K compliance fee per new build. Here at Opes, no fee at all for the investor. Though again, remember, each of these companies is charging a fee as well to the developer when you decide, yep, that is a good investment. In terms of the properties they tend to recommend, so iFind tends to have those townhouses with that commercial contract in place. Positive real estate tends to be those high spec apartments, and then Propellor houses, townhouses, apartments, and Opes Partners houses, townhouses, higher yielding apartments. Though of course remember that each of these companies aren't necessarily going to be recommending the same developers, the exact same properties. They're going to be recommending whoever they've got relationships with. Now we've gone through each of these companies, who they are, what sort of properties they recommend, their services, and also what those services cost. But again, there are two other things you want to look for when you're selecting a property coaching company. First of all, you want to see, well, who do I actually trust? And then second of all, who do I think is going to give me the best quality investing advice? And ultimately, that's going to be a subjective decision that you've got to make on your own. And if you'd like to find out more about investing in property here in New Zealand, make sure you check out the Property Academy podcast. Every single day we release a new 10 to 15 minute-ish episode to teach you something new about property here in New Zealand. You can find that on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favourite podcast listening app. And one thing I'd like to say is if you are from one of these companies mentioned in this video, if there's anything factually incorrect that you think, they didn't get that quite right, just drop us a line, let us know, and we'll get that fixed.